Hello, everybody, and welcome on in. We have 5 weeks remaining in the NFL season. Playoff spots are starting to get clinched, or at least are going to soon. So let's dive in and rank these teams once again and see where they all sit entering the month of December. Before we do, I want to quickly say if you're new, subscribe would be greatly appreciated. Leave a like and let me know your thoughts down below. Now let's jump right into it. The first honorable mention is the Carolina Panthers, and they confuse me as a team. One week they play like it's back to 1995 and they're an expansion team. The next week they look like they're back with the 2015 squad that's ready to win a Super Bowl. You really never know what to expect. Three forced turnovers, including a pick six and a big time fumble to seal the game at the end. As the defense is feeling pretty good for Carolina, as one of their units, I'm pretty confident in saying we know what to expect from them as they played well overall. Still gave up 150 yards rushing and 250 yards passing, but again, a solid game that made the plays when it needed to most. Bryce Young had a really solid game, throwing for 206 yards and 3 touchdowns on only 20 attempts. And while the ground game had 164 yards to pair with it, they went toe to toe with one of the best teams in the NFL. They got a nice win. They're continuing to make that push for the division. Even though this might not be the season for them to fully make a run at the Super Bowl, usually you still have to feel pretty good about what Carolina has put out there on the field for what they can be next season. But if they can just get consistent on the offensive side of the ball, this is a team that is 100% able to make a push and able to make a run. We'll see how they play with 5 weeks left. For now, they're an honorable mention. The next honorable mention is the Philadelphia Eagles. And they've been a very weird team this season. This was just another example onto all of that. And this might have been the worst all-around game they've played all season. Beginning with an offense that just couldn't get a lot going in this one consistently, Hurts threw relatively fine, 230 yards and 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley once again had a very minimal role in this game, only 13 carries, even though he was running pretty well. They had three straight three and outs after a field goal that they had, and then followed by an interception. And just drives were not coming easily for them. Only one drive spanned 10 plus plays, and even with that, not a single drive was over 3.5 minutes in length. Just a not the kind of style you want from this Eagles team with how they've been playing. The defense played fine against the pass, but the Bears were running the ball incredibly well over them. They firmly took control of this game. The Eagles were outplayed entirely, and it just has not been the season that you would expect from a defending Super Bowl champion. We'll see. There, I feel like change needs to happen to some degree, even if it is just changing play callers, which Sirianni did say after the game that they're not going to make that change just yet. So something is definitely feeling weird in Philly. We'll see how they muster these final 5 weeks. I'm not too high on them anymore, though, so they fall to an honorable mention. The final honorable mention is the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they're one of those teams where every single week it feels like you're getting a dice roll the type of game they're going to play. Some weeks they're really good defensively and they win through that. Other weeks they're fantastic on the ground and they win through that. And then other weeks, kind of like this one, is the pass game being the main focus. Trevor Lawrence went for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns in this one. The ground game took the back seat, only 30 yards on the day. No rush had over 30 yards on the day, and the whole team mustered 2.6 yards per carry. So yeah, a really not good game against on the ground. The defense though played pretty solid, going against the Titans offense that's still trying to find some footing. They gave up 141 yards to Cam Ward, 67 yards total against this Titans ground game. They forced 2 fumbles, one of them being on special teams, and it wasn't a pure dominant showing, but they still had firm control and handled business. But my main complaint is after the 2 early touchdowns, they went on to go 3 and out 3 straight times and totaled 7 punts on their 11 drives. So for as solid as they played, it's not enough to push them into the top 10 just yet, but they're right there. They're very close. But for now, they stick at the honorable mention. Number 10 is the Detroit Lions, and it feels weird having them this low, but they just have not performed to the expectations I had from them this season. Even with the injury to Amon-Ra St. Brown in this game, they still played well. They were nearly walking away with a good win. Jared Goff went a perfect 15 for 15 after starting the game 0 for 3. Jameson Williams, who had a great game in this 144 yards receiving, had the very untimely drop on fourth down that pretty much cost the Lions this one. The Lions defense was playing a bit off in this game. They led up 234 yards and 4 touchdowns to Jordan Love and 125 yards total on the ground. They did have the injury to Terrion Arnold, who was put on IR shortly after. So that's something to keep an eye on there. They forced 2 punts the entire game, those being the Packers' second drive and second to last drive. So you needed a bit more from that defense. As for the Lions' aggressiveness, it did come back to bite them a bit in this game, more so than going for it right out of halftime. That is definitely something I am more skeptical on. As for the other fourth down they missed, Jameson Williams needs to catch that ball. He knows it. The entire team knows it. That's one of those ones that you probably run that same play again if you had the chance to. It nearly worked. It would have been great for the Lions. Just an untimely drop. But they did have that questionable no false start. I'm not really going into that all too much. All around, though, they're on the outside looking in for the playoffs. The Lions are a team that feels like they should have been able to compete for a Super Bowl this season, but just one or two things is going wrong every single week to make games closer than they should be, and to even have the Lions be in the spot they're in right now. So they come in at number 10. Number 9 is the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud is back, and he played pretty well in a big time win for the Texans. 276 yards on 22 for 35 passing, going against the Colts defense that has played pretty well this season. The ground game was also solid, had a solid showing, just over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. But the real stars, once again for the Texans, was their defense, who had a great game, especially in the first half. They forced 4 punts for the Colts on their first 6 drives, and a turnover on downs in there as well. They also had a nice bend don't break drive in the fourth quarter that forced a field goal, which was a key drive stoppage there. And then they had a good turnover on downs on the final drive of the game for the Colts on top of it. The Texans had multiple drives that spanned 10 plus plays and 5 plus minutes, including an 8-minute drive to start the second half. And they just thoroughly outplayed the Colts throughout most of this game. Be able to get a massive win in the division. They're a game behind Jacksonville and Indianapolis now for first place. And it feels like they have found their identity at the right time due to Davis Mills having to play for 3 weeks. This defense is one of the best defensive units in the league. They were showing that a bit early on in the season. They just couldn't get the offense to pair with it quite yet. And it feels like they have now with this new style that the offense is going with. I really like Houston. If they can sneak into those playoffs, they're going to be a very tough team to beat and a team that no one really wants to play. So because of that, they come in at number 9. Number 8 is the Los Angeles Chargers, and they handled the Raiders pretty well. They got a nice win. They're playing a style that we saw a lot of them from last year and even earlier on in the season. Herbert threw the ball well, even with the injury he suffered during the game, going for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kimani Vidal had 126 yards of the team total, 192 yards on the ground. And it's a ground first team. The Chargers were like that last year. They're going to be like that this year under Jim Harbaugh. He likes to coach pretty ground focused teams, even going back to his time in the 49ers. So I'm not too surprised that they're going back to this style a bit, even though they had a few kind of primarily passing games earlier on in this season. The defense played really well, shutting down this Raiders offense. The ground game only had 31 yards total in this one for the Raiders. Geno Smith was picked off once and held to a total of 165 yards through the air. The game started with the Chargers having back-to-back 8+ minute drives. Even though the second one resulted in an interception, it is still really impressive to be able to have those long sustained drives at this point in the season. So it's a great sign for the Chargers going forward. The defense, again, great job. Forced 5 3-and-outs throughout the entire game of the Raiders' 9 total drives. The defense played exceptional. The offense is finding their groove. Chargers come in at number 8. Number 7 is the Chicago Bears, and that was a dominant performance from the Bears. It was a very good statement performance for them. They went on the road and handled business against the defending champs, and they determined the style of game. The Bears ground game produced 200+ yard rushers for the first time since 1985, and that's a very impressive thing to do against this Eagles defense. They had double the time of possession as Philly due to multiple 10+ play drives, and they had multiple drives that lasted 5+ minutes. Caleb Williams threw the ball fine. He wasn't asked to do a whole lot because of the ground game working as well as it did. The defense played a great game, being able to get off the field on third down pretty consistently. They forced 2 turnovers, including a fumble on the tush push, which kind of shifted the momentum back to Chicago in the second half. I was waiting for a win like this from the Bears, so I am starting to jump on the hype train a little bit. Still kind of hesitant, just because, we want to see a bit more from the passing game. But if the ground game is going to give you 200+ yards consistently, then who am I to really judge? We'll see how they play next week against the Packers, as that game's probably going to decide the NFC North. For now, the Bears come in at a very solid number 7. Number 6 is the Denver Broncos. It came down to the very end, for the Broncos once again to sneak away with a win and to keep this winning streak going. Similar to some of the games before the bye week, part of the hiccups for this offense is seemingly due to having to have a massive focus on the passing game, as J.K. Dobbins got hurt and he is still not yet returned after being placed on IR. Even with that, Bo Nix threw the ball really well, 221 yards and a touchdown on the day. RJ Harvey ran for 2 touchdowns, including the game winner in overtime. I have personally really liked what we've seen out of RJ Harvey, being that more of a receiving back. He only has room to improve in this Sean Payton offense, so I'm really excited to see how things progress for him. The defense played really well enough to get the win, especially in the second half, in order to get the game to overtime in the first place. They picked off Mariota once, gave up just under 300 yards on the 50 pass attempts they faced. Nick Bonito made a game-winning play of overtime by swatting down the 2-point pass attempt, and the Broncos hold on. Being able to win these close games is very impressive, but to me, I'm starting to feel a lot of the same vibes that I was getting from the Chiefs last year. The Chiefs won those 12 one-score games last year, and everyone was like, this is why they're the Chiefs, is why they're that good of a team, and we're seeing how they're playing out this year. While yes, it's really great to see the Broncos get these wins, they're not too sustainable of ways to win. And at some point, the ball is not going to be in your favor. We'll see when that turn starts to happen. For now, they come in at number 6. Number 5 is the Green Bay Packers, and it's about time for the offense to get their groove back, and it arrived at the perfect time. Jordan Love played great, going for 234 yards and 4 touchdowns. Dontavian Wicks became the main guy to step up in this one. 2 touchdowns and 94 yards on the day. It was great to see someone be able to make those big time catches that they've been needing someone to make, and Wicks was the guy. Josh Jacobs ran well, getting 83 yards on 17 carries. The defense played relatively fine. They made the plays when it mattered most, including a 4th down stand to begin the second half, a key sack to force a field goal in the 4th quarter. Micah Parsons ended the day with 2.5 sacks, and he was a problem for this Lions team. The game could be summed up with a few key moments: the 2 4th down stands, the sack late, and the questionable timeout that the Packers got to set up for a nice ball to Romeo Doubs to make a 4-point swing in this game, which doesn't seem massive, but in the grand scheme of things, that did impact how this game was played a little bit. Packers got a bit lucky. You're going to need luck late in the season to be able to handle some of these really top-tier teams. Packers get the nice win on Thanksgiving. They re-enter the top 5 for the first time in a few weeks at number 5. Number 4 is the Buffalo Bills, and they had a bit of a rough start for this game, but eventually they found their groove. Josh Allen, after the early interception, he ended up throwing for 123 yards and a touchdown, to pair with 38 yards on the ground and the record-setting 76th career rushing touchdown to pass Cam Newton for the most career rushing touchdowns by a quarterback, and that record is only going to get higher from here. The ground game was the biggest story for the offense in this one. James Cook had a great game, going for 144 yards on 32 carries. He was the main focal point of the offense. The defense also played great, holding the Steelers to 7 points, and they were unable to move the ball pretty much at all in this game. The Steelers were. Rodgers had 117 yards. They picked off Mason Rudolph. They got a scoop and score in the opening play of the second half. The Steelers were held to a total of 166 total yards, 10 first downs. The Bills had about 42 minutes of time of possession in this game, and it really was that start of the second half that you knew confidently the Bills were going to win this game after, because the defense really stood out. They made 2 really nice plays. Joey Bosa feels like he finally made a big time play, getting that forced fumble. And then Christian Benford, he was the one that scooped it up to return it for 6, and he got the interception against Mason Rudolph. All around a great bounce back win, and the Bills, there is a road there for them into the playoffs. We'll see how they play the final 5 weeks. For now, they come in at number 4. Number 3 is the Los Angeles Rams. And yes, they lost. I still feel like they played a really solid game, though. It's going to be filled with overreactions because of how they lost and the fact that they did lose, but I'm not going to overreact too much. Stafford threw for 2 interceptions, yes, but he also threw for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. The first one being one of the best passes I have ever seen. The end zone angle of that throw still makes no sense how he threw that ball. Stafford is just a wizard like that. The ground game had a pretty solid game as well. Blake Corum and Kyren Williams combined for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. The defense had a bit more of issues that can definitely be a bit more of a concern. They gave up 3 touchdowns to Bryce Young, 164 yards on the ground. It wasn't a good performance for what we've seen from the Rams this season, but that's exactly it. I'm confident to say that that was an outlier performance from the defense. So I'm not going to put too much weight into it, as this is the defense we have seen time and time again to be one of the best defenses in the league this season. So I get some of the concerns. I get that there's definitely issues to be had there, but I still feel like the Rams are one of the best teams in the NFC and one of the best teams in the NFL as a whole this season. And they're still probably my pick for the Super Bowl, but I am going to drop them a few spots to number 3 for the loss. Number 2 is the Seattle Seahawks, and just dominance. Pure dominance from the Seattle in this one. Even though the offense did not do a whole lot in this game, that wasn't really their mindset in this game in any way. Going against a first-time starter and undrafted rookie Max Brosmer, the game plan was to simply don't make the mistakes that were going to cost you this game, and they did not do that. Darnold had 128 yards, and the ground game went for 125. They did look towards special teams and defense in this game a lot. Josh Myers had another great showing, 4 for 4, which included a 56-yard field goal. The defense picked off Brosmer 4 times, including a pick 6. They held the Vikings ground game to 66 total yards. It was a defensive-driven game plan for Seattle, which makes complete sense when you're going against the Vikings with Max Brosmer leading the way. So I'm not going to put too much into the offensive kind of lack of performance in this one. As again, they were just simply trying to move the ball relatively well and take the points when you can get them and let the defense make the plays to seal this game away. And that's exactly what happened. I do expect the Seahawks offense to play a bit better throughout the rest of the season because that is what we know from Seattle, especially JSN as well. Still feel pretty confident in Seattle. They're still a really good team. And their defense, if anything, kind of just boosted up my hype for them even more. So the Seahawks come in at number 2. Number 1 is the New England Patriots, and they just had a dominant game from the jump against the Giants. It never really felt like the Giants had a chance, even with it being a 2-score game pretty late in this one. The offense was moving well early. The defense was making plays and keeping things tough for the Giants offense, and they got some help from the special teams as well. A 94-yard punt return touchdown for Marcus Jones, a really bad botched field goal operation from the Giants, and a forced fumble on a kickoff in the second half. The Patriots are one of, if not the most complete team in the NFL. They're playing really sound football. They're one of the very few teams that you can confidently say you know what to expect week in, week out. And that is Drake May throwing for just under 300 yards and probably a somewhat deep touchdown or two. A ground game that's going to be able to put up at least 100 yards total on the day. And a defense that's going to make you work for every single drive you have. And also a special teams that can make a big time play if need be. This is back to the Patriots that we used to know before Belichick and Brady left. So it's a very scary sight for the rest of the NFL if they can keep this up over a yearly consistent basis. For now, though, the only issue I can find with this team is the fact that they are a young team and thus they are inexperienced in the playoffs. We'll see how much that has an impact, but at the same time, if they get the 1 seed in the AFC, it's not going to make too much of an impact. So we'll see. We'll see. They come in as the top team on my power rankings and in the NFL to me. So there you have it. Quick little rundown. Detroit Lions are at 10. The Houston Texans are at 9. Los Angeles Chargers at 8. Chicago Bears at 7. Denver Broncos at 6. Green Bay Packers at 5. Buffalo Bills at 4. Los Angeles Rams at 3. The Seattle Seahawks are at 2. And the New England Patriots round things out at number 1. I appreciate all of you tuning in. Subscribe if you're new. Greatly appreciated. I'll see you all next time. Have yourselves a damn good one. Peace.